Okay, morning all. Welcome to this Subject and Scrutiny Committee 1 meeting, which, due to government advice to the public to practice social distancing, will be held virtually with committee members and officers accessing the meeting from remote locations. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed subsequently. Please can everyone ensure that all mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda on Friday the 10th of September, and for the record the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at no other times please keep your cameras and microphones switched off to help minimise background noise. Please do not use the microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Scrutiny will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. If any members wish to speak or raise a point of order, they should please click on the raise hand button at the top of the Teams window, and I'll come to you in turn. Please don't use the instant messenger chat to enter questions or comments. I'll now ask the Scrutiny officer to announce the names of councillors in attendance at this meeting. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, my apologies. The officers in attendance at the committee meeting this morning are Councillor Tom Beadle, Councillor John Paul Blundell, Councillor Jane Gebby, Councillor Tom Gifford, Councillor Cheryl Green, Councillor Gareth Howells, yourself, Chair, Councillor Kay Rowlands, and Councillor Tim Thomas.
Thank you, Tracy. And item 1 is apologies for absence, please.
Okay, I've received apologies for absence from Councillors Richard Collins, Councillor Pam Davis, Councillor Martin Jones and Councillor Caroline Webster, registered representative for the Church in Wales, Reverend Canon Evans, and the Head of Education and Family Support, Nicola Anchanis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas, please. Tim Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. Not so much apologies, just the fact that I do unfortunately have to leave at 11, but just before 11 AM for another meeting.
Okay, no problem, thank you. And Councillor Blundell, please.
Just to add the apologies of Councillor Bridie Sedgbeer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 2 is declarations of interest. Does any member have an interest to declare? Councillor Blundell, please.
Yes, I would like to announce a personal interest, as I am a community governor at Kevin Glass Infants. Thank you
very much. Councillor Beadle.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I express my personal interest as being the Chair of the Gen Governors Association.
Thank you very much. Lynn Morris.
Hi, yeah, for a personal declaration that I'm a parent governor at my state comprehensive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Green.
Yes, I'm an LEA governor at Bryn Terrain Comprehensive and Trelallis Primary.
Thank you. And Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a local area governor for Bryn Menyn Primary and Coleg Cymedol of Erwin.
Thank you. And Councillor Gebby, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm an LEA governor for Mynydd Cymfig and Pyle.
Thank you very much. I think that's everybody. There's a couple of hands still raised. If everyone can lower their hand unless they need to speak. That's great. Thank you very much. So item 3 is approval of minutes of meeting held on the 14th of June. I believe we do have a couple of changes to this. I've got Councillor Beadle's hand up. No, it's gone. Councillor Gebby, there is a change for you, isn't there?
There was. I was actually in attendance. I did submit my apologies, but rearranged my diary, and I'm happy to approve them otherwise. Thank you
very much. That's great. Okay, so can I have an approver and a seconder? Sorry, Jane's, Councillor Gebby's just approved. Can I have a seconder for the minutes, please?
I'll second them, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 4, we've got how the Central Consortium supports Bridge End schools, and I'll ask the officers to present the report. I believe we've got Clara giving us the report, if I can ask. It is Clara, isn't it? Apologies, I thought it was, sorry. Yeah, so if I carry on, and I'll ask members to raise their hands afterwards.
Lovely. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the invitation to come and talk to you this morning about the work that we've been doing across Bridgend. I'm going to take you through some of the report. I know you've all had copies of it, but one of the things that I want to kind of do is set the context of this. So we have been working in the context of a global pandemic, and it has been an incredibly difficult year for everybody, particularly our head teachers, and I'm sure they can say more about that, those heads who are here. At Central South, our intention is to work with school leaders to help them navigate through the challenges that they face, and this is none more important than this year. We've had significant changes in the areas of accountability. As you're aware, categorisation continues to be suspended, and actually this has given us the freedom to work differently with our schools. You will have received copies of our key documentation. They were the appendix to these reports. And they provide more operational detail. And we're happy to take any questions on those should you have them. But before really getting into the report, what I wanted to do is kind of share with you some of the principles that we're working to as we move forward. Excuse me. So our aim within Central South is to empower schools to improve outcomes for all learners. And this is done by working in partnership with the local authority to provide bespoke supports to all of the schools within Bridgend. We will continue to support and challenge school leaders so that they can demonstrate progress against their school improvement priorities. However, this is being done in the context of a global pandemic and the uncertainty that this brings. So there is a significant focus on well-being and making sure that our staff in schools are equipped to be able to manage the challenges that they face. Our improvement partners will be brokering and quality assuring the support that's going into schools, because we need to make sure that it is effective and fit for purpose. So within this report, it sets out how we're going to do all of these different things. It gives you some background on how things have changed within Wales and within the consortium. But I'm going to focus more on the looking forward and what's going to happen throughout this year. It is about working alongside schools, looking at their school improvement priorities. All schools will have more time and support from Central South. And this is because all schools are in a different position. We have significant reform this year within schools. We all know that the new curriculum is due to be implemented in September 2022 or 23 if you're a secondary. Alongside that, the ALN has changed, and of course we continue to have the challenges that COVID face. And although we're only back a couple of weeks into school, we can already see how that's impacting on the quality, on the provision within school and staffing and attendance. It is worth reminding you that regardless of the model that we implement, the local authority still has its statutory powers of intervention, but we are working in a way that is an early intervention model. So what we're hoping is that we have all of the information between us, the local authority and the consortium, and we can come together with schools to share that information and address any issues before they become a significant cause for concern. So within the report, it talks about in section 4 what we will provide. So as I've said, we will have a school improvement partner linked to every school. Every school will also have a Welsh and Education officer, and this is part of the work to enhance the provision for Welsh in both English medium and Welsh medium schools, ensuring that we're offering the right support to those schools. Newly qualified teachers will have access to an NQT programme, and this has been revamped and updated this year to take into account the experiences that students will have had during their training because of the pandemic. We continue to offer the National Professional Qualification for head teachers, and this is done in conjunction with the other regions, so it's a national programme. Alongside that, we have a range of professional learning opportunities for staff, whether that's linked to the reforms or about general leadership and enabling staff to progress throughout their career. All of this professional learning can be adapted to meet the needs of the school and the clusters. So some of it's delivered nationally, some of it is delivered regionally. We also deliver it on a cluster and school-based approach. It was lovely to hear that so many people are governors in schools, which is fantastic. And those people will be aware that we do offer the mandatory training for school governors. Alongside that, we are supporting governance right across the region, and we've introduced regional leaders of governance. And this is to make sure that all governing bodies have access to the right support. We know that it's incredibly challenging to find chairs of governors and vice chairs of governors if they're new and they don't really understand the process. So our regional leaders are there to help and mentor and support those people. We offer a range of projects that schools can access. And we encourage schools to engage with these projects if they're linked to their school improvement priorities. We also have a significant bank of case studies and resources that schools can access. We have updated our website over the holidays, so hopefully those things are a lot easier for everyone to find. We know that we're really keen to promote a self-improving system and schools to work together to share best practice. And I think having our repository of case studies really shows that there's more than one solution to any problem. We're really clear that there isn't a one-size-fits-all. Our support has to be bespoke to each of the schools. Alongside that, we do have some statutory responsibilities around the grants and making sure that those terms and conditions of grants are met. Welsh Government has changed its accountability process. We've seen that categorisation is suspended. We have a new document that's in draft form from Welsh Government at the moment, but I think the principles of that document will stay the same. And it's moving forward in a way that is based on schools' needs, having a really robust and accurate self-evaluation, and making sure that support is fit for purpose and meets those criteria. So our improvement partners have a really key role in supporting schools to be able to question what they're doing, and really make sure that there is robust evidence around those priorities. Those priorities are then shared with the local authority so that we're all aware of what schools are working to, and we can make sure that support is then appropriate to those schools, whether that's coming from the local authority or coming from Central South. Then on a termly basis, we're looking at the progress that the schools have made towards meeting those priorities. And that's done in conjunction with the school leadership team and the head teacher. And it's where the evidence is coming from to make those decisions. Ideally, it's having first-hand evidence, but that's also being done this year in the context of COVID and the impact that that's having on our schools. We will work collaboratively with schools. We're also making sure that schools have that opportunity to engage with other schools. So really promoting that school-to-school support and that supported self-evaluation. I think one of the things we're really clear on, as this is a model as we move forward that's done with schools and not to schools. So it is about building those relationships with schools and making sure that we can provide that support. So relationships are really key. But that doesn't mean that it's a cozy relationship. It is a professional relationship. and there is an expectation that improvement partners will have those challenging conversations with heads. But I suppose the difference is that the improvement partners know the context of the school and understand why things are happening or why things are not happening. I have said that this is an incredibly challenging year. We know that going into the year, and part of that is because of all the change that's happening. So we've got curriculum and all the changes that that brings. We know that the planned reform journey has been impacted by COVID, and some schools have really been able to embrace that and use the pandemic to develop their curriculum. And other schools, because of their circumstances, have really had to focus on day-to-day operational issues last year. So our support is about taking schools from where they are and helping them to move to where they need to be by 2022. This is going to be a challenging year, as I've said. We know that there's going to be lots of questions asked of schools around readiness for the curriculum. We are expecting an updated Journey to 2022 document in the next couple of weeks from the Minister. And we all want to know that our schools are ready for 2022, whether that's, you know, at a local level, at a regional level, or at a national level. So alongside this support to schools, we have put together a range of resources and documents to help support schools, both in implementing the curriculum and in general around teaching and learning. We have a range of documents that are in the system from last term, but they're being relaunched and they've been updated. Promoting equality and promoting equity and excellence. And this is really a tool that schools can dip into to help them think about equity for all pupils. So when you look at the document, it's a series of questions and thought-provoking discussion points to really help schools think about what's right for their children and their learners. And it goes back to that point that there isn't one size fits all. In that document, we also haven't listed every vulnerable group, because actually the vulnerable pupils in each classroom will be different, in each school will be different. And you know, you can ask any teacher, who are they concerned about, who are their vulnerable pupils, and they can tell you the pupils. It's not about the category of the pupil. I've mentioned that we will have more time allocated to each school, and it's worth unpicking that a little bit more. So we will have schools, we know that all schools have a lot to do, and we are there to support schools to do that this year. So we've increased the number of days. So you have the outline of the days in section 4.8 of the report. And they are a minimum amount of days for each of those groups of schools. We will then, working with the school, the local authority and the improvement partner, we will categorise whether the school is getting core support or enhanced support. And the enhanced support is for schools where there's bigger priorities or there are more concerns around the progress or the capacity that the school has to be able to implement those changes. So there will be some monitoring of that and a close working relationship with the local authority around those schools. One of the changes that we have is improvement partners will not necessarily be the people responsible for providing the on-the-ground support to those schools. It's about identifying the right support and the right person to provide that support. So, for example, if we have a school where one of their areas of development is phonics, the improvement partner may not be really a phonics specialist, they're a leadership specialist, so they could be brokering that support from someone else within the team or one of our extended lead practitioners. However, the improvement partner does have a really clear role on monitoring that support and ensuring that it's fit for purpose. And it's doing that with the school. What we don't want is to be another layer of bureaucracy within the school. We're not an inspection service. We're working with the school, linking into the school-based systems, and being that external scrutiny during the school's own monitoring and evaluation process. So it's working with schools. Again, alongside that, it's around how we share that information with the local authority and how it's a two-way conversation. So there are regular meetings between the principal improvement partner and local authority colleagues, and that's an opportunity for dialogue and to ensure that there's kind of no surprises as we go through the year. And Team Bridgend is a really important communication tool, both for the local authority and for the consortium. And I think it's really enabled effective communication during the pandemic, and bringing everybody together so that everybody hears the same messages, and there's no confusion. So really what we're saying is that throughout this year, schools will receive the support that they require. It will be monitored by our school improvement partners. It will be shared with local authorities. Where things are not working as well as we would want, whether that's in terms of the effectiveness of the support or challenges within the school, we'll work with head teachers, consortia staff and local authority staff to make sure that there is the right support for schools. So I've talked an awful lot. I'll stop. And I've got some colleagues. We've got Andy Rothwell, who's your Principal Improvement Partner, and Andrew Williams, who's the Assistant Director for Partnerships and Improvement, with us. And I'm hoping that between the three of us, we can answer all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara. There's a great deal of information in the reports that you've provided, which I'm very grateful for. I'll open it up to the floor now. So first of all, we've got Councillor Tim Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I read the report. I think it's very positive about the Welsh in education officers for both the Welsh and English mediums schools. I have had a number of conversations with our director over the years about some of the challenges for teachers, well, head teachers really, in the Welsh medium sector, chiefly in the challenges of recruiting Welsh-speaking teachers. And I'm just wondering really, how effective is it in collaborating with similar local authorities who no doubt have similar challenges in addressing these concerns with the recruitment of Welsh-speaking teachers, but not just the recruitment, the retention and the training and any other personnel challenges with special particular interest to Welsh-speaking teachers in the Welsh medium sector.
Thank you for that. It is obviously a huge concern. We do have a regional group of Welsh medium schools. So there's two groupings, there's a secondary and a primary groupings. They do work together across the 5 local authorities to discuss those issues. Recruitment is a challenge because recruitment is a challenge this year, full stop, with the number of people going into teacher training. You then add in the Welsh medium layer into that, and that becomes even more challenging. The Cyfleoedd Plus, which is our secondary group, are finding that even more challenging to find secondary specialists. So much so we're now in discussions with the Minister around what else can be done to recruit and to raise awareness among students that there are opportunities within the Welsh medium sector. I don't think it's an easy fix. The retention is a significant issue because actually we have a small pool of teachers and all they're doing is moving around different schools. You see people and you think they're working in one school and suddenly you realise they're working in another. We don't have an easy answer for that, but it is definitely something that we are working on. We are raising with Welsh Government at every possible opportunity. We're really pleased that the new minister has both education and the Welsh language in his portfolio, and hopefully he can really make a difference to strategies that will get teachers to stay in the Welsh medium sector. But we are working together. We are sharing strategies. There is a training programme for teachers within the Welsh medium sector. All of the training that we offer is offered through the medium of English and through the medium of Welsh. And I think we're doing an awful lot. There's probably more that we could do, but at the moment it's about finding those teachers and getting them into the system. So we're also in discussions with initial teacher training institutions and how they can work at that level. But as I say, it's not a quick fix, but it is definitely on the radar.
Thank you very much, Clara. That seems to be a reoccurring problem right across every directorate. It's very, very concerning with recruitment issues at the moment. Councillor Charles Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, let me lower my hand because I'll only forget later on. Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, thanks, Clara, and thanks for the presentation. As Clara knows, one of the bees in my bonnet is the need for training and resources which is subject-based. I know that the new curriculum goes across subjects, which is very, very welcome. But to go across subjects, you do have to have that subject grounding in the first place. So I'm very pleased to see one of the bullet points which Clara put up in the report is to do with resources, best practice and so on. I think that's key. And I know that has been a concern amongst your committee chair. You know, I think Reverend Edward Evans, I remember, was very, very motivated with this issue. I spent the five significant years of my professional life as an initial teacher trainer, and I know what a job it is to get postgraduate certificate in education students interested in delivering their subject through the medium of Welsh. There was a time when there was quite a huge amount of resource pumped into translating established textbooks into Welsh, for example, for economics and business studies, which was my area when I was an initial teacher trainer. And although my Welsh is confined to GCE O level, I did sit in on some economics lessons delivered in Welsh, which I found incredibly interesting. But I can confirm there is a problem doing that. So it is important, I think, to talk to the initial teacher training establishments in Wales, especially in South Wales, to make sure that there are incentives for students to think about teaching their subject, but through the medium of Welsh. As a bilingual person myself, the language of my mother is Spanish, and I know from that experience that you've got to use it or you lose it. And there was a time when I could deliver a lecture in English and immediately translate every sentence into Spanish. I don't think I could do that now. I'm totally de-skilled. So as a consortium and as an education authority, and really as a group of schools, we need to think about this and think of ways in which encouraging the students who come to do their teaching practice to think about using some Welsh. Oh yeah, and I'm rambling because I knew there's a point I wanted to make, that this isn't an issue just for Welsh medium schools. No, when I was doing this work, we encouraged all teachers in all schools to integrate some Welsh into what they were doing, because the name of the game is bilingualism, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member. Councillor Smith, I wonder if I'll bring Councillor Green in a second. I'm just wondering if any of the schools would like to say anything about the problems with recruitment, just to add to the record. If anyone wants to put their hands up in the future, I'll bring you in. So, Councillor Green, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for a very interesting report. I noted in the report that you actually have replaced the NSCS with the CSC model. I was just wondering, are there fixed criteria for determining additional support needs? Is the school categorisation still applied to these criteria? And how would we, as a scrutiny committee, measure the benefits to the schools of applying this extra time? I mean, how would we identify that effectiveness as a scrutiny committee? Thank you.
Okay, Andrew may want to come in and give a bit more detail around that, but if I start, this isn't categorisation by the back door. I think that's really important. Categorisation has gone. We are working with schools to identify their priorities and to provide them with support to meet those priorities. How we're distinguishing those schools that we don't have specific criteria in the same way that we would have done under the categorisation model. What we do have is, if there are a range of concerns within a school, following discussions with the local authority and with the school, that school may move into enhanced support. And the enhanced support is more about the monitoring and the ensuring that the school is making rapid progress to fix what its issue was. What it isn't is, if you're a school that has, let's imagine you're a school that has had a significant turnover of staff, you have a year group that's a little unstable, shall we say, because you've had some new teachers in it. We may be putting in significant support to those individual teachers and to that year group to do things, but that isn't a school-wide concern. It's a very specific issue, but it may take a lot of support. Where I think schools are in enhanced support, it's because there are bigger issues at a school-wide level, and it's the real difference is around that monitoring. How, as a scrutiny committee, are you going to know that schools are making progress? This is probably our biggest challenge that we faced this year. But it is about looking at the progress that schools are making against their school improvement priorities. So each term, we'll look at schools and say, are they on track to meet those priorities? Are they off track? If they're off track, why are they off track? What can be done about it? And then for those enhanced schools, it's a more detailed breakdown about why things are progressing, why things are not progressing. That will get fed back to the local authority on a termly basis through the standard monitoring that we have, and we're working on how that can be shared with scrutiny as we go through the year. I think one of the real challenges is it's easier to present data in terms of 5 A to C's, level 2 qualifications, key stage outcomes. We don't have that anymore, so it is a much longer report. It's not a nice simple table anymore, but I also think that really helps people get under the skin of the school and get to know the reasons why and the rationale behind that data. I'm not sure if I've answered all of your question. Andrew, do you want to add some more to that?
I think you've covered the bones of it, Clara, but I think for all of us in education, I think the suspension of categorisation is really exciting, and I think it's suddenly a direction of travel that we need to take, because now we can really focus on what schools need to support their improvement, as opposed to being constrained by a categorisation process that in reality didn't necessarily support schools and learners, because schools are so focused on that very public colour that they were allocated. Quite often we weren't able to really get a full picture of the school and to be able to provide the support necessary. So I think with the new structure and framework, we are able to really understand what school needs. Schools can be honest and clear with us, and it's a high accountability framework, but it's a low stakes, and that's really important. I think one of the initial comments were around the national categorisation. Was this a national approach? And when Welsh Government produced their initial guidance, the 4 regions got together and we looked at what were those key, really important, non-negotiable principles that all the regions in Wales needed to adhere to. And the first one of those is around discussion, and that's the big important part of this process. It is a dialogue that happens between schools and us and local authorities and schools, and I think it's that open transparency and partnership working which is the strength of this. And I think we all know that, to do effective school improvement, there has to be an element of challenge there, and if the challenge is done appropriately, then it leads to improvements. And I think by that open dialogue we can support schools appropriately, and as Clara said, it's a bespoke move from what potentially is core support into enhanced support. That's very individual, based on very individual schools, and there should be no surprises when that move is discussed and happened, because all of the evidence will have been built up over a period of time in conversation with colleagues in schools and colleagues in local authorities as well. I'm not sure if I've added any more flavour to Clara's input there, but if there's any further questions around that, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Cheryl's not got a hand up, so I suspect that's Councillor Green, please.
Thank you for that, Chair. No, I totally understand the ethos behind what has been said. What I was looking for, would there be any way of us comparing how well our local authority was doing under you as others, not about identifying schools, not interested in that. It's just to get an understanding as scrutineers exactly how well we are progressing or not. But I don't have any problem at all with the answers I've had so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Oh, sorry, Clara.
I was just going to say that's something that we can work on, how we can build some of that into it. I don't have a simple answer at the moment, but we'll take it on board.
Thank you very much. I'll bring Councillor Smith in at the moment. I appreciate you're looking at ways that you can bring this information back to scrutiny, and Councillor Green said she wouldn't be interested in individual schools, but I would be interested in having a look at the rolling data on how each school is doing and the improvements that they're looking to get. Scrutiny is all about, this is the pinnacle of what we're looking into, is how our children's education in individual schools, of course, is going to be the detail we require to scrutinise it properly. I was just going to ask Lindsay if he could come in to say how much information you think we'll be able to have available for councillors for scrutiny for future. Lindsay, are you able? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Clara. I agree with Clara. It's quite challenging at the moment. I think scrutiny members will be aware. There was a directive probably 2 years ago now, Clara, around the use of comparison data at a pupil level. Again, it's very difficult to extricate some of the individual school performances, especially when you've got low numbers in particular exam groups, without identifying individual pupils. So again, we would need to be careful with that. Similarly, the directive we've had from Welsh Government is to use it very much for school improvement and to move the system on rather than comparison for ranking, if you see where we're at. Now, I know that's not the desire of scrutiny, but again, that's very much the message we've had from Welsh Government. I think Clara has made a really important point. I think one of the things that we can do, and we are doing, in fact, because I know we discussed it last week, Clara, is one of the things that the directors are looking at is providing that information within the expectations of Welsh Government to scrutiny. The one thing that Clara has done with her team, which we would welcome, and certainly Scrutiny will benefit from this, there is plans afoot to revise the reporting mechanism from Central South. And I very much welcome the move that Central South has made here, and just to make sure it aligns more particularly with individual local authorities' scrutiny functions, we will be shortly moving from a termly to a quarterly reporting function. Now that's obviously ties in with our corporate performance assessment process, which would be much more beneficial. And I agree, whatever we can do to provide Scrutiny with the intelligence you need to make your recommendations, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you both. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've lowered my hand. Just want to thank Clara and Lindsay and Andrew for what they have just said. I think that this is actually one of the positives that's come out of COVID, where the fact that we've suspended the categorisation and we've broken the link really with between data and performance indicators, and we're taking a new look at the whole thing. The whole thing now is going to be work in progress. We're working out a new way of assessing schools. There should be a perfectly good way of assessing individual schools through ESTIN. And I think problems have arisen really when judgments of ESTIN haven't quite matched judgments of the consortia. I think if you listen very carefully to what Andrew said earlier on, I know he sort of came over all modest at the end, but what Andrew says is always incredibly good value, actually, and you should listen carefully to what he says. And I am very pleased that actually we've broken the tyranny of categorisation, and sort of linked to that is the fact that we've broken the tyranny of high stakes end of year exams. And I'm very pleased that I know the fellow who's been doing it was sacked yesterday, but we are not saying there must be exams next summer at all costs, because these are the only way of assessing, because we now know that that is not true. And what we've got to do is build up our confidence, self-confidence with teachers, and our confidence in teachers for their assessment. This is actually going to be central to the new curriculum, and I think in Wales we're ahead of that. So I would ask that your committee members, Chair, resist the temptation to fall back into the old mentality of thinking that test results are performance indicators, and the only performance indicators that are worth measuring are test results. I think that this is a positive coming out of the new normal.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Yeah, I totally agree. What it might be nice is if we could have, not mentioning any individual schools, but just some examples of improvements that have been made, and so we can look at the positives and the ways forward. That would be lovely as well. So a couple of questions from the floor now. I've got Councillor Gareth Howells first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Clara, and thank you for that presentation, very interesting. I wanted to refer to para 4.1. You partly answered the points I was going to ask for some more to expand on the sort of headline bullets there. What I was asking is that, and recognising obviously in the past year we've had the impact of COVID, are there any aspects that you think that possibly there that I'd be interested to hear your views. Are there any changes in the light of COVID in the way that the service you're providing, and before COVID and after? And what I'd also be interested in is to hear the views of the officers of authority and the school representatives present here of the effectiveness of the support during COVID and how they think is going forward. And probably the third part then is to, obviously there are clearly positive aspects, but are there areas that you, the authority and the schools think that could be improved? And how do you ensure that any feedback about suggestions, how are they processed, and how do you implement any of the changes, and how do you respond? Sorry if it's a bit of a multi-factored question, but I think I'm just trying to sort of capture on the scrutiny side what the feedback view is from the authority and yourself on that and schools. Thank you, Clara.
First of all, there have been significant changes before and after COVID. I may need, again, my colleagues to talk a bit more about life before COVID, because I started just as we went into lockdown. So my entire experience is a COVID one. I think the biggest changes that were made during the pandemic is the focus on teaching. So initially, when we went into lockdown, the focus was very much about ensuring that teachers had access to the technology to be able to do distance learning, and working with the authority around that digital exclusion, both in terms of teacher skills, and I know the authority did an awful lot to get kit out into the system. We've changed our delivery model, and I think we will always now have a hybrid delivery model. All of the training, both in terms of the national and the local programmes, moved very quickly to an online delivery model. Realistically, I don't think we'll go back to a full face-to-face delivery model for many of our sessions. Alongside that, there were things that were introduced purely because of COVID. So one of the things we commissioned was additional coaching support for head teachers and senior leaders, which was completely independent of the authority and the consortia. The only feedback that we got from that were the number of hours that were used and by which authority. And that was recognising the wellbeing challenges that our system was facing. Nobody went into, when everyone starts going into teaching, you don't get the training for being a leader when you start off, let alone a leader during a pandemic and a crisis. I think during the pandemic, we've also recognised that there are real differences in the system. So if we think historically at the schools that were considered to be really good schools, they also had challenges facing the changes that were being implemented because of the pandemic. And that's what led to us changing our model, because no matter how good a school you are, you can be, outstanding and excellent, however many excellents you can get from Eston over whatever period of time. But actually, there'll still be things in school that you need to improve. There's no such thing as a perfect school. And this has really given us the opportunity to work with schools to say, actually, what is it that will make your school better? Rather than what's going to get you to be a green school. So I think those national changes have helped with that. Alongside that, we've looked at our evaluation processes. So all of our professional learning is evaluated. What we have learned is it's really hard to get evaluations back from people in a virtual world. Both that short-term evaluation and longer-term evaluation. So one of the things we're building into our programme for this year is improvement partners working with head teachers to say, okay, where's the impact of that professional learning that your staff have been on? This is the training that they've accessed. What impact is that having on learners? I think alongside that, we look regularly at what's working, what isn't working. We continuously update our own systems. We have an effectiveness and efficiency report from the consortium that's shared with our local authorities. And that's really looking at, are we getting the best value out of the resource that we have? I think during COVID, we've got some really good value out of the resource because we're not travelling. I think now as we implement travel time to go back to face-to-face visits, we're going to have to deal with that issue. You know, I've visited a school in Bridgend this week, and it's phenomenal seeing our schools and meeting the head teachers, but it does take some extra time out of the diary, and we have to look at that. I think as well, our changes have been very much about helping schools to prioritise and really giving them permission not to engage in certain projects, and helping them to say, actually, this isn't for you now, because I think there have been some instances where schools almost feel the need to start at the beginning of any of the changes and keep working through until it's completed, but really helping schools to prioritise what needs to happen. And I think the content of all of the training and professional learning has changed and does reflect the pandemic and next steps from the pandemic. What you won't hear is you won't hear a recovery language in any of our training or in any of our documentation. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is that our children and young people did have an education during lockdown. And if we talk about recovery and lost learning and gaps, then we're devaluing the work that our head teachers and teachers did throughout the pandemic. But we are recognising that everyone's coming back into face-to-face learning at a different point and working with schools to move those children on. So I'm not sure if that's answered your question at all, actually, but
no, that's helpful and interesting, and obviously I'd be interested to hear the feedback from the authority representatives present and the school representatives, because I think it's important that that three-way dialogue is it carries on.
Chair, more than happy to provide feedback. Can I ask in the first instance, through you, perhaps we can get feedback from our head teacher colleagues who are present today, and I'd be more than happy to provide a local authority response afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got any of the school invitees, would you be willing to input on this question, please? Oh, hello, hi. Kay John, sorry, what's your first name?
Thank you, Chair. It's Catherine John.
Catherine, sorry,
Yeah.
lovely to meet you. Please
Hello.
carry on.
Thank you. Yeah, just talking about obviously COVID. It was a massive challenge for all of us. You know, everybody very, very quickly had to adjust, particularly with regards to sort of online learning. And the support we had from Central South, there was a huge amount of things that were on offer. That one of the most important things, I think, for us as schools was what kind of model we were going to use and utilise very, very quickly. And a really useful document that was put together very quickly by Central South was a blended learning guidance, which provided a variety of different approaches and strategies on different rotation models. Obviously, that was personalised then by the schools, depending on their context and so forth. But during the whole of the sort of the COVID sort of the pandemic, we've had a variety of different professional learning opportunities, and as Clara said, travelling was obviously cut down for us in Bridgend. You know, going to Aberkennin was quite a challenge. So in terms of time efficiency, that was a massive saving for us. A huge amount of professional learning based on digital learning. You know, our staff had to really upskill very, very quickly to provide blended learning for our children, our pupils, and the best method that suited the schools. So there was a huge amount of workshops, there were webinars, you could dip into, lots of schools dipped into them, lots of Bridgend schools shared their practice of their journey and how they had gone about providing blended learning for their children and the pitfalls and the successes and so forth. There was a repository that was available through Conver as well, which schools were encouraged to share their resources that they produce a blended learning, so teachers from different schools could tap into that. Virtual events, there were a number of different virtual events, curriculum design, particularly in the summer term, there were curriculum design workshops as well. So even though we were operational and, the IU was still on focused on curriculum design as well, because we were looking ahead to 2022. So there was a lot on offer. For some schools, they found it a little bit overwhelming. Some schools dipped into it as and when they were needed, and some schools took full advantage of everything. So it was very much on a needs basis. There were things that were provided and schools dipped into things as required, really. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit of an overview from a primary perspective.
Thank you very much, Kath. I do apologise. I've got everyone's names in front of me now. Very rude of me. Can I now bring in Hannah, please? Hannah Castle. Hannah Rideout. Hannah Castle, yeah.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Kath has reported from primary, and so much is echoed in secondary in terms of the vast amount of resources that were made available quite swiftly, actually, by Central South. I think we all had to adapt quite quickly and show quite a bit of flexibility. And it was nice to see that Central South had to work in that way as well and worked with us and supported schools. I know that a number of Bridgend schools were involved at secondary level in sharing resources, sharing ideas. Pencoed presented Maesteg, CCYD, Porthcawl. I know a number of schools, and beyond the Bridgend schools. So we were able to look at engagement strategies, pedagogical principles, blended learning opportunities that were being delivered across Central South. So actually we had probably a wider range to refer to than we had previously. So that was one of the positives that did emerge. And I know, very similar to what Kath said, schools dipped in and out for aspects that they felt they needed, that we felt was a priority for us. Maybe at Config might have been different for somebody else. A priority for us, example, was engagement, and we were struggling during the pandemic initially to get the levels of engagement that we felt were going to be required. So I linked in personally with Central South, had a meeting with Andy Rothwell, had a meeting with their advisor and their support that they offered in terms of engagement with my improvement partner. So we were able to do a variety of things, I think, as schools to gain the support that we needed. Impact is interesting. Somebody mentioned impact, and I think that a lot of the professional learning opportunities, we've had to measure that impact here in school. So did our engagement levels increase, for example, as a result of watching what maybe was happening in Pencoed and how they were engaging their children? Did that have an impact here at Config? And that's something that we had to do as schools to reflect upon within our own self-evaluation processes. But I would echo very much what Kath said. There was a range of support that was available. I would also say that as secondaries, we had to look at examinations, didn't we? We had to look at A-levels and we had to look at GCSE, and we received support, obviously, from Central South in what was a very difficult, very fraught process at times, not necessarily all that well communicated from the Welsh Government, but actually the support from Central South was useful for us. On a personal level, I think head teachers felt a big responsibility in having those additional people at Central South that you could speak to, share, that they could broker information for you, was really useful at a really challenging time. I think that probably would sum up what I feel from a secondary perspective.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely brilliant. With my mum hat on, I thought everything was superb, and the speed that everyone changed the education system was fantastic. I can say that as a mum. Can I now bring in Councillor Blundell, please?
Thank you, Chair, but mine's a separate question. I don't know if the other teachers want to come in.
Is anybody else want to come in on the last question?
Chair, I had my hand up.
Oh, I do apologise. Hannah Castle, please.
It's Helen Ridout. Hannah Castle was from Fig.
Helen Ridout, I do apologise. I'm so sorry.
It's all right, no problem, no problem. It doesn't help that I don't think our full names are on the screen. So morning, everybody. I just thought that it would be helpful to give you a perspective from a special school. Obviously, our pupils and the needs and blended learning within a special school environment look very, very different to how they've looked in mainstream schools. For obvious reasons, it can be quite challenging to get to people with behaviour, emotional and social difficulties, or autism, or profound and multiple learning difficulties to engage in things, and our focus had to be on health and well-being. I'm not suggesting that mainstream schools had any other focus in mind, but actually our core business was about making sure that people were safe. So our priorities were very different. In terms of the support from Central South Consortium, I think that they offered us, and they always do, a very adaptable and flexible approach within special schools. Clara's met with us quite recently prior to the summer holidays, and we're given, I suppose, autonomy as a group of special schools within Central South Consortium to identify the problems that are causing all of us kind of consternation, and then find this solution-focused approach, normally through some kind of peer-based inquiry model, but it is very collaborative. We are kind of pushing the boundaries in terms of moving forwards. So I think it's really important that we recognise that as well in terms of what they've brought to the table. I think also during the COVID-19, pandemic, whilst it wasn't necessarily welcomed, they did keep us on task as well. So things like the MPQH continued, the aspiring head teachers qualification, continued. We continue to have special school head teacher meetings. And like I say, there were times when I'm sure all schools thought, oh my goodness, I really don't want to be going to this meeting. Actually, it kept us moving forwards, and it kept the profession moving forward. So, really those things were welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, positive responses from all the schools then. That's great to hear. Councillor Blundell, I appreciate your question is entirely different. I think we're done with the school subject now. Thank you.
I thought we were going back to the Chair. I thought we were going back to Lindsay. I thought he was going to give the authority's perspective.
Lindsay, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Howells. Yes, just to echo really what the head teachers have said, I think it's important you hear from them, obviously, in the first instance, because they were the major recipient of the support from Central South. I'd certainly echo it, and I'd also like to pay tribute, and I'm sure you would as well, Chair and members, to the enormous amount of work that head teachers have done over the last 18 months. It's been nothing short of miraculous. They've worked continuously, always with the learners in their school front and foremost, and at the very core of everything they do. So I think it's been a team effort. I'm indebted to head teachers for working with us with patience at many periods over the last 18 months. And I know that the support from Central South has been very much tailored to the needs of individual schools. So generally, I think it's very positive. I'd also like to recognise the fact that during the period we've had comments back from the regulator, Estin. They've mirrored the very positive feedback that head teachers have shown in this meeting today. They've acknowledged the strong and sympathetic support that we've received from the consortium. And I think it's just testimony really to the excellent relationship we do have with our colleagues in Central South. And this is clearly paying dividend now as we emerge from the last 18 months of difficulty. I don't think we're there yet. I think there's still challenges, as all head teachers and elected members will be aware of. But I think Helen Ridout raises a really important point, is that what we're trying to do is obviously we're trying to make things continue and maintain the practice and make sure the school improvement is obviously key and very important in all of our minds going forward. So there is a balance to be had. But again, just to echo the views of head teachers, it's a very positive relationship. And again, we are very pleased with the service we received from Central South from the local authority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lindsay. Apologies, Gareth, Councillor Howells. I think we've heard from everyone now. I do appreciate it. It's been so positive that, and I saw no hands up, so I saw no need to continue. Are you happy with the responses, Councillor Howells?
Yes, and thanks. That was very encouraging, and it's good to hear that the honest comments made. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much. Apologies for bringing you in too soon, but Councillor Blundell now, please.
Not a problem, Chair. I know it's difficult to chair a meeting on Teams at the best of times with as many invitees as we have today. My question is about the budget and about every year since I've been elected in 2017, we've cut our funding to Central South Consortium, and I believe the other members of the CSD have also cut their funding over the years. My concern is, are we still able to offer, well, are you still able, not me, are you able to still offer the same level of service that our schools want and need going forward if any more future cuts are forthcoming? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, budget is always a challenge. There have been some cuts to the core budget, which you will be aware of over recent years. However, alongside that, we've also had some changes to our grant funding, so we've been able to balance that out. And I think we've been fortunate to be able to look at the grant terms and conditions and alter some of the work that people are doing to fit with those grant terms and conditions. As we move forward, I'm really grateful to all of the local authorities in that we haven't got a cut coming into our budget for next year. And I think that's a recognition that there is a significant amount of work to do. So yes, we can offer the same services that we've offered. I think in reality, we actually offer more services than we have done previously. And again, part of that is the removal of categorisation. I'm probably fortunate not to have lived through the categorisation process, but I know from looking back at documentation that it was a huge amount of time. And yes, for some schools, it really will have given them a school improvement focus and given them an opportunity to improve. But I think there was also an awful lot of time that wasn't focused on school improvement around that. And now that work is focused on school improvement and really getting to what are the issues. So I think as an organisation, over the past 2 years, our model has become more effective. But at the same time, we have to be really conscious that we're not, the analogy I use is we've kind of pulled that elastic band really, really taut at the moment. And we have to make sure that we don't pull it to a snapping point, because that's the only people who are going to suffer in that are schools. But to reassure you, we can still offer the same service and we're not expecting any budget cuts in the immediate future. But I completely appreciate that we're living in a really uncertain funding world.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara. I've got no other hands up, but I do know that our Chair of Governors is on here. Can I bring in Councillor Beadle, please, just to say a little bit about how he feels about the service?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Although being a Chair of Governor for many years, I also chair Bridgend Governors Association. And I must say that the relationship with Central South is good. We get regular contact with the challenge advisor. Obviously, that their input is invaluable to the school improvement plan, but also the relationship that we have when we go through performance management with the head teacher. And my screen changed. I don't know if I'm still on. But anyway, it was. I was going to say that the information that's coming through, I mean, there's lots of communication coming through from Central South. I get regular emails. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and they've got their web page, and there's also connected to the Welsh Government education pages. So there's masses of information there. And I know as a Governors Association, Andy Rothwell have been to us a few times. And I've never had a refusal for an invite off him. But one of the things that I would like to explore with Andy is the fact that Central South have actually got a governor steering group. And I haven't had any information returned about that or any minutes. But that's something I would take up with our representative, but he doesn't seem to acknowledge the fact that there was anything to report back, which I doubt very much, and I'm almost sure that those meetings are minuted. But in all fairness, that the relationship that I have with the town's advisor and with and Central South is very good, and I know that the amount of training that is offered for governors is an important factor. And what actually concerns the Governors Association is, unfortunately, a lot of governors don't seem to undertake that training. So to be an effective governor, that it's important that you partake in the training and be upskilled and updated with current information and current legislation, especially with the way we're looking at the new curriculum and how it's going to be delivered. But I don't know what else to add at this moment, Chair. That I did have a few other ideas in my head, but I don't know if Andy want to respond. Perhaps he might trigger a few more ideas from myself.
Thank you, Councillor Beadle. Over to Andy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Beadle. So I suppose on the three things really that you've mentioned, obviously more than happy to continue coming to your meetings, attending, giving updates to chairs of governors alongside Lindsay, who always attends as well. In terms of the governor steering group, I'll glean some information there and make sure that's channeled to you. I'll speak to representatives there, and then just sort of the governor training element that you've talked about there. And I know we've got a session coming up in October, where I think part of the session is looking at governors and governor training. We've done a little bit of insight and research. We'll share some more findings there, but one of the stark things that's actually occurred during the pandemic has been the significant increase in uptake of training from Bridgend governors. Just to give a feel for some of the information, we've seen a 161% increase in governors in Bridgend accessing training through Central South, and I think that probably reflects some of what we've spoken about previously around a different delivery model and governors finding it a bit easier to access that training. So yeah, I look forward to that session in October where we can explore that a little bit more. But yeah, that's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Do you want to come back, Councillor Beadle?
No, I mean that was the response that I was expecting. What I would think is interesting is the amount of emails that I get from Central South Communications. But it's impossible. I only share with my governing body through the Clerk of Governors, but I think that the authority should be receiving these emails through governor support, and that they should be sent out to governors. Obviously, that as an association, I can't hold email addresses because of GDPR, but I would like a wider spread of this information disseminated to governors across the country from governor support. And just one other burning question that I have, and this is probably for the Director and Governor support, is the fact that parent governors elections have been put on hold, and we've had vacancies for some time, which of course we couldn't fill because we couldn't have the elections. And as we move into next month, most schools now will have their annual general meeting where they will actually fill up the committee structures. And yet when you got vacancies on the governing bodies, it's incredibly difficult to maintain these committees because it's an essential part of school management. So I just wondered if Lindsay and governor support can actually do something about arranging the parent elections, so that we can have a full complement of committees going forward for the next year. Thank you.
Lindsay, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Beadle. So 2 questions there. First of all, about streamlining communications. Absolutely, I think that's a really good idea. I'll pick that up with Central South after this meeting, and perhaps we can look at using the Monday mail shot there as a method to get this out to schools and governors. More than happy doing that. Secondly, with regard to the parent elections, I know this has been a challenge certainly for many schools over the last 18 months. Interestingly, we are resurrecting the director's newsletter. I know it's a riveting read and you all look forward to it every term. That'll be coming out this term, and we'll be highlighting some of the changes we're going to make that to make it easier for schools. What would be helpful, Councillor Beadle, is outside this meeting, is if perhaps we can have a conversation, and I'll make sure that that meets your expectations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Councillor Beadle, do you want to come back in at all?
No, just thank Lindsay for his comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll bring in Susan Roberts, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Just in relation to the comments that Councillor Beadle has made about the vacancies of parent governors, that's something that within the local authority we recognise the challenge there. And I was speaking yesterday to Robin Davis, who is Group Manager then for Business Support. And one of the things that is actually posing the challenge is that the elections still have to be done manually, and of course that's more tricky in COVID. The suggestion that was made yesterday, excuse me, my phone's ringing. Sorry, excuse me. The suggestion that was made yesterday then is that existing parent governors continue in their role, and perhaps even extend their role where possible, just to reduce the number of vacancies until those new elections can be arranged. You know, we recognise then that there will still be some vacancies, and the kind of governor support then will try to manage that as best they can to fill those vacancies as soon as possible. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Susan. Councillor Beadle, is that something that's being relayed to Governors Associations?
Well, we haven't met as an association, obviously because of COVID, but from personal experience in my school, that I've had 2 parent governors right throughout the pandemic. And obviously the school function still goes on, and we've had regular governor meetings. But as I say, the important factor is that every October we got annual general meetings where we need to firm up our committee structure, which is the management committee of the school. And it has been very inhibiting, you know, for where we go. I mean, we've had difficulties because all our meetings have been virtual meetings, and it's the same with all schools. I suppose those that parents didn't wish to continue as parent governors because the children have moved on to comprehensive school, or else they didn't want to take on another term of office or extend a term of office. It leaves all these schools with vacancies, but obviously that important committees that need to be manned, for another word, that you know, it still needs to be addressed, and the sooner we can resolve this issue, the better.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Beadle. I've got no hands up, but I think it's very important that you take Lindsay's offer up and meet and iron out all these massively important issues. I appreciate your contribution. So I've got no further hands up. If no one else wants to speak, may I just say thank you very much for the consortium for your presentation today. Really positive, very reassuring, absolutely great. And thank you to the school invitees. Councillor Smith, as the Cabinet Member, has kindly invited me to meet with you all as the new Chair of Education. I look forward to meeting everybody for a start in the new term, as soon as we can actually get back out and start those meetings again. And thank you to Councillor Smith for inviting me. And I'd just like to say thank you. We're going to move on to our forward work programme, but I doubt if you want to stay for that, you're very welcome to. But otherwise, I will say goodbye to the attendees, invitees.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If I can just say, visits to schools, I'm still not sure whether we can really restart those just yet. They are on my agenda, but I think we need to be a little bit cautious still.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
I'm
okay,
just very.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. So the committee is requested to consider the recommendations of the recovery report in paragraph 9.1 on page 12 of the agenda pack. Meryl, I don't believe we need a mover and a second for this, do we? Meryl? Or Tracy?
Sorry, Chair, my mic was off.
That's okay.
I was speaking away and then I realised you couldn't hear me. Yes, if we could have a mover and a seconder, obviously we will be concluding all of the comments and the answers in the minutes that we draft. I don't believe there were any recommendations made unless members want to discuss that now.
Can I formally move the recommendations that were in the report, just to move things along, Chair?
Thank you very much. A seconder, please.
I'll second that, Chair.
Great, thank you. Item 5 then, forward work programme.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from members' consideration of the forward work programme at the previous meeting on 12th of July, the forward work programme for this committee is attached as Appendix A. Just as a note, this forward work programme will be included in the next report to Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee with any updates from this meeting. And the recommendations monitoring action sheet is attached as Appendix B to track responses to the committee's recommendations at previous meetings. And just to say, the recommendations are set out in paragraph 9 on page 118 of the report. And hand back to you, Chair, if there are any questions from members.
Do we have any questions from members? So we've got the committee's requested to consider the recommendations of the recovery report on page 118 of the agenda pack. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Formally move, Chair.
Thank you.
And I'll formally second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blundell. So our final item, item 6, there are no urgent items of business in respect to this notice, and I can now bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.